I didn't plan to write a book about Alzheimer's. It just happened. I had been working on a novel, my first novel, for a few weeks, and it just wasn't gelling. And one day I was at work. I'm a nurse, and I was working as a hospital case manager in a rehab unit, and I met this couple who just captivated me. And she had Alzheimer's, and he was very, very frail. And the funny thing about the two of them is they had driven up from Florida to New York by themselves without any mishap, which I really couldn't believe given the condition that they were both in. And what I remember about her is she was very lovely, in her mid-80s, a stunning woman, very beautiful and very sweet. And her husband, he was quite physically frail, and the two of them were devoted to one another. And what happened was, after they got back to New York, without having any problem, she fell and broke her pelvis and ended up in the hospital. And so that's where I came in. I was the discharge planner, and I had to assist them with a rehabilitation plan for her. And that plan was for her to go to a local nursing facility for some therapy. And I discussed all of this with them and with their son. And at the end of our conversation, their son said to me, "I'll be here tomorrow to take my parents to the nursing home. I don't want them to leave the hospital without me. Can you make sure that that doesn't happen?" And I said, "Certainly," because that was not an unusual request. And I left. And from that point on, I couldn't stop thinking about that couple or that family. And I was wondering, well, what would happen if they did manage to leave the hospital on their own without their son? Where would they go? What would they do? And so that became the foundation of Blue Hydrangeas. As time has gone on, because I wrote the story beginning in 2002, it's a 10-year project in the making. Alzheimer's, I think as most people know, is a very prominent disease, and it affects 5.5 million people, which is kind of not the actual number, because anyone who cares or loves someone with Alzheimer's is also affected, so it's actually exponential. So I think that the topic of Alzheimer's is very relevant, and my book sheds light on what those who have it and the ones who care for them go through. When an author decides to self-publish, it's really scary, because there's nobody holding your hand or helping you get through the process, encouraging you, convincing you that your work is worthy, that you're going to be successful, that it's a great story. You don't get any of that. So you're kind of out there on your own. It's like launching your baby into the world. You don't really know what to expect. And quite frankly, there's the risk of failure, which is, I think, very great for a lot of authors who decide to take the indie route. And there was the possibility that the book would be a colossal flop, and I would have to remove it from the marketplace. And I knew that when I went in. But I proceeded anyway, because I just felt this was an important story that needed to be told. And I put it out there. It was on April 22nd in 2013. And we had a very small book launch, but people started to respond to it right away. And before I knew it, I had developed a fan base of accumulating reviews on Amazon that were beyond anything that I ever expected, averaging about 4.7 stars out of 5. Most of the reviews are 4 and 5 stars. There's 1 2-star and 1 3-star as of today. And the responses are coming from people who have lived with this disease, either as caregivers or as a loved one of somebody who's been through it. And I wasn't sure if that audience would even be interested in this book, because after living through that, maybe they didn't want to have to relive memories or go back and visit some times that were painful. But the opposite has happened, in that the people who respond are people who are grateful to read the story. I believe it gives them a sense of validation that what they went through was real, and to see it presented in the way that the book presents it. They've thanked me for it. They've written me emails. They've written to me on Facebook. They've written the reviews on Amazon and Goodreads, and have thanked me for writing the book. I've heard from a gerontologist at a college in North Carolina who wants to use the book in her coursework and her curriculum, which was fantastic. One woman wrote that my book is her story too, which was a comment that just about brought me to tears. That made me feel like I had done a good job. And I've been compared to Nicholas Sparks' The Notebook, and also one reader commented that if you like Debbie Macomber, then this is the book for you. I finished the book in 2004, and at that time people weren't independently publishing as they are now. It wasn't a popular way to go about getting your book out there, and readers weren't buying them the way they are now. So of course I tried to go to the traditional route and started sending out the query letters and the cover letters and making contacts through writers groups and conferences, and nothing happened. And this went on for quite a while, and part of the whole rejection process was not having anybody write to me directly, and after reading my book, because nobody ever read the book, about at least 50 different query letters with rejections. There was not one person who actually read the book. So I didn't have anybody to tell me that this is a good book, what a lousy topic, you didn't do a great job, it's never going to sell. I never heard anything like that at all. It was just silence. And that's very discouraging and disheartening. So I put the book away for a while and got working on some other projects, but I kept going back to it because I felt that it was an important story that needed to be told. And a friend of mine who had published on Kindle said to me one day, "Why don't you publish on Kindle? You know, what have you got to lose?" And at that time, the Kindle had just come out, and people were really starting to respond to ebooks, and independent authors were starting to make names as writers. So I said, you know, I guess I can do that. So it took me about a year to get that going. And finally I got my files uploaded in April of 2013. And the response was wonderful immediately. The first thing people wanted to know was, where do I get a paperback? Which I hadn't even thought about. And then suddenly I needed to find a way to create a paperback on my own as well. So I ended up going through CreateSpace, which is another Amazon company. And it was pretty easy. The only thing I had a problem with was doing the formatting. And I hired somebody who worked inexpensively and quickly and took care of that end for me, and got the book up in September. And now we were in business, and I actually had a physical copy that I could sell at book festivals and craft fairs or wherever I could, as well as the ebook on Kindle. And then gradually moved the ebook into iBooks, Nook, Kobo, and other online retailers. So it's available pretty much across the board for any kind of e-reader. And then lastly, and most recently, I made the book into an audiobook through ACX, which is another Amazon company. And that is also doing well at this time. And I think anybody today who wants to publish a book should really consider doing it on their own. It's the only way you're going to have any kind of control over your product or your timeline. And quite frankly, I don't feel that the publishing industry is interested in working with fledgling authors or helping to give people a leg up. As a nurse, I feel I am the keeper of many stories. I think all nurses get to hear a lot of amazing and tremendous stories from their patients. I was the type of nurse, or I am the type of nurse that people feel they can open up to, and so I've been given a lot of stories that really are about the human experience. Some of them are very sad, some of them are joyful and triumphant, but I think that because I also write and I have those skills and I desire to do so, that I have an obligation to tell these stories. Of course, I don't reveal any personal details or names or anything. A lot of my characters are composites of many different people that I've met throughout my practice. But a lot of the stories are actually real. A story of Jack and Sarah in Blue Hydrangeas, as I said earlier, was based on a couple I actually met and a set of their circumstances. Everything else in the book and all the other characters came from something else. But you know, everybody's interested in reality these days. Reality TV is really big, and for the most part, that's all fabricated. It's really not real. But the stories that I hear are real, and so I feel that I want to share them with people so that they can really get a dose of reality. Well, I make sure that readers can find my book in a number of places. Probably not in their local bookstore. They could ask, especially if they live near an independent bookstore. That would be the best place. If you're looking for a physical copy, you could go there and ask them to order you one, and that can be done. But most of the time, they're available in paperback online through Amazon and the Create Space store. The ebook is available through Kindle, iBooks, Nook, Kobo, Scribed, and several other international online bookstores. All you have to do is do a search. And the audiobook is available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. So I apologize if I've left anyone out.